So good afternoon. Thank you for being present. I will start by asking my colleagues to introduce themselves. We'll start with Alexander.
Good afternoon. My name is Alexander Matusz. I'm from Slovakia. I'm the election analyst of the Election Observer Mission.
Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Mitchell. I'm from Scotland. I'm a member of the Scottish Parliament and one of the observers of the mission.
Good afternoon. Senator Philip Ozer from the States of Jersey in the Channel Islands.
I'm Randy Horton, the Speaker of the House of Assembly in Bermuda.
I'm Marian Gabriel. I'm also from Slovakia and election analyst for this election observation mission.
We had another two observers which left. They had to leave this morning, which is Fern Narcis, which is a legal officer from Trinidad and Tobago. She left this morning as well, and Juanita Barker, which is a legal officer but from Guyana, and she also left this morning. So that would make the whole team of observers. This is, as promised, during our introductory press conference, we are issuing our preliminary report, which it is a brief report practically explaining the findings of our mission, the most important findings, and we will be issuing a report a more detailed report within 2 months, not later than 2 months, which will be accessible for public domain, obviously accessible to the media. At the end of that press handout we gave you, there is an email address. I will be keeping that email address, so if you would like, after the final report is over, to ask me some questions, please feel free to contact me. It is our view that the 2030 general elections in the Cayman Islands met the international standard for democratic, genuine and transparent election. We feel that the results truly reflect the will of the people. We commend the people of Cayman Islands for the way these elections were conducted. The peaceful election process allowed different opinions to be expressed freely. The high voters' turnout is also a very positive sign, and it shows the commitment of the Caymanian people to the principles of democracy. Our first part of the preliminary report deals with the political background, but obviously I do not need to debrief you about the political background. Probably it's the other way around. You can debrief me on the political background, and some of you have already done that. So I will spare you the details. I have to say that our observers met political parties, candidates, members of the civil society, all commissioners, election officer, voters. We specifically went into the streets to speak to voters, a variety of cross-section of voters before the election, members of the media, election officials, returning officers, and amongst many others. We have attended political rallies of different political parties and also those of some independent candidates. So we were able to observe a little part of the campaign too. We have observed very closely the preparations for the election, and the day before the election, all observers visited the polling stations in their district, in their constituency, the constituency they were covering. And we also visited the day before the counting centers to see the final preparations. On E-Day, I will speak about E-Day in the last part of the press briefing. Legal framework. Most not noticeably, we have included a few words with regard to multi-member districts vis-a-vis the single members district. This essentially means that one Caymanian living in one district can have up to 6 votes, while another Caymanian living a few kilometers away in another constituency, in another district, can have 1 vote. One would have 6 votes, another Caymanian would have 6 votes. This disproportion in the number of elected members per electoral districts contradicts the principle of 1 man, 1 vote, or 1 person, 1 vote, to be more gender neutral. It is an international principle that 1 person, 1 vote, and we believe that this contradicts this principle. This is a matter of some concern to us. This is further undermined by the fact that the average number of electors represented by one elected member in the Legislative Assembly varies considerably between one constituency and to another. For instance, in the case of Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, you could have an MP and a member of the Legislative Assembly being elected by an average of 520 votes, and then another member of the Legislative Assembly in Georgetown being elected with average of 1,240. So even this disparity, we had to highlight it as well. Election administration. It is our view that the election office has acted in an impartial and transparent manner and has demonstrated a high level of professional competency. Political parties as well as independent candidates, and as I told you, we've tried to meet practically a wide variety, a wide cross-section of candidates from all parties and also independent candidates, in general have expressed satisfaction with the performance of the election office. All electoral preparations were completed in time, and we have to say that the elections were very well prepared and administered. Voters' registration. There is a provision which states that in order to be eligible to vote in the Cayman Islands, you have to be a resident of the Cayman Island for 2 years out of the last 4 years, immediately preceding the date of registration. So out of the last 4 years, before you register and be eligible to register as a voter, you have to be 2 years out of the 4 years residing in the Cayman Islands. There are certain provisions, to be fair, in the Constitution which allows for certain instances when one person could be abroad for certain reasons, and there is provision for that. For instance, when you are studying abroad. But then, if you are studying abroad and you are also working abroad, you would not be eligible to register as a voter. We believe that these provisions, some of them are over-restrictive and could disenfranchise a number of people who otherwise would have been given the right to vote. According to 2010 census, population and housing census, only 56.3 of the total population of the Cayman Islands are Caymanian citizens, and so eligible to vote, only 56.3. We also have to say, and this is definitely very positive, that in 2013 elections, the registered voters reached 18,492. This is a notable and commendable increase of 3,121 electors, which is 20.4% as compared to that of 2009. And this increase in registered voters is definitely a plus, a positive, and we welcome it as observers. According to 2010 census, around 5,000 Caymanians in voting age have for some reason or another not registered as voters, and consequently have been left out, either by our own choice or otherwise, out of the electoral process. There are 500 Caymanians, as I said, who are in the voting age, but for some reason could be out of their own choice. They were left out of the electoral process. Candidate registration. The number of requirements to register. There is a number of requirements to register as a candidate. Some are a little bit too restrictive, we feel. Example, the required duration of residence in the Cayman Island before nomination appears to be unreasonably and limiting the right to stand for elective office. As you know, the right to stand for elective office is another basic right, and we believe that some of the requirements are over-restrictive. Person can be disqualified, I'm tackling the issue of dual citizenship, can be disqualified to stand as a candidate if by virtue of his or her own act, under any acknowledgement of alliance, obedience or adherence to a foreign power or state. there seems to be lack of clarity in the legislation when what exactly constitutes his or her own act. And this subsequently led that the election office took different decisions to what have appeared to be very similar cases. We met candidates. One candidate who was disallowed to run as a candidate, and she had to go and renounce her USA citizenship. And then there was another candidate who seemed to have no problems in running the election, even though he had a USA citizenship, even though, to be fair, his passport had expired. As you know, the election officer is entrusted to make the initial decision whether a person can contest as a candidate or not. If a person does not agree with that decision, he can challenge that decision in court. Now, this is, you have to take this also in the local scenario. When, as you know, much more than me, there are many Caymanians who were born outside the Caymanian Islands, or to parents, or who were born to parents with other citizenship, and therefore either possess or have a right to possess some form of other citizenship, apart that of the Caymanian citizenship. Election campaign. It was a lengthy campaign. It was 2 months of campaigning, which started after the nomination of candidates on 27th March, or I would say at least probably it started before, after the nomination of candidates on the 27th of March. I have to say that we found that it was conducted in a peaceful atmosphere. Candidates were all able to campaign freely and express themselves freely. Fundamental rights such as freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and freedom of movement were respected at all times. Public media provided balanced reporting and contributed to the fair conduct of the election campaign. And I have to salute you and thank you for a job well done, because the general perception was that you acted you were very balanced in your reporting, very fair. Private media provided airtime and space to equal candidates on an equal basis. However, and we have to report this because it was told that we've been told, UDP accused some private media of being openly biased against the party, and some even refused, or we were told that at least one refused a request for paid adverts on the last day before the election. We were told that there was a request for some paid adverts, and it was refused. As a mission, we have to say we did not carry a quantitative or qualitative media monitoring, so we are not in a position to confirm or refute these allegations. There were widespread allegations of vote buying by different candidates and parties. We had reports as well. We tried to follow them. It was not always easy. We have met the police commissioner and discussed this. I have talked also to the police commissioner some time ago, about 2 hours ago or 3 hours ago. And according to the police commissioner, the police received a total of about 24 allegations of related to alleged corruption related to the election, and although all these reports were being investigated. One other positive thing was that the Anti-Corruption Commissioner, the police service and the election office took a proactive approach and launched an awareness campaign, including a confidential reporting line to fight against illegal practices of buying of votes through money, food vouchers, white goods, or whatever. I've got a copy of the posters, which I'm sure you are aware of, which were issued in the run-down to the elections, which was part of the awareness campaign. And I think this is positive, and it's a positive initiative. I have to say that we also raised the issue of alleged vote buying with all candidates and political parties that we have met. Obviously, the answer was that they were not doing it. It was the other party who was doing it. But we took the liberty to trace the issue with each political parties that we've met and with each candidates. We are also raising the issue of election expenses by the candidates. The electoral law, as you know, sets the limit of candidates' expenditure when it comes to election. This is 35,000 or 30,000 respectively. These figures are realistically low considering the prices in the Cayman Islands. It is our opinion. And there is also no means of verification if a candidate exceeds that limit or not. So we think that the 30 and 35 is exceptionally too low, and there is also no means of verification if a candidate actually exceeds that limit or not. Election day, we visit, the observers visited all polling stations. That means that we've been in 46 different polling stations in 6 electoral districts. Overall assessment of observers, because they were asked to fill a form which says the overall assessment, ranged from very good to good in all polling stations. The procedures were followed from what we observed. Polling staff were generally well trained, and polling agents representing different candidates were present in all polling stations. We would like to commend, the mission would like to commend in particular the fact that women were very well represented among the polling staff as well as among the polling agents. This is definitely a positive aspect. I told you that this is a learning experience for us as well. We came here to monitor, but we will take many positive things out of this experience. And the fact that women were so widely represented, both in the amongst the polling staff and even as party agents or polling agents, this is definitely a plus. And I will definitely take this to Malta and try to convince more of my colleagues female colleagues to be as representative as if in the Cayman Islands. This is definitely a plus and very positive. We have observed counting in 10 out of the 19 counting centers. So we've covered 10 out of the 19 counting centers. Counting procedures were followed and counting was conducted in a transparent manner. The number of invalid votes, spoiled ballot, was around 1%. The turnout was exceptionally good. It was 79.94, which is slightly less than the 2009 general election, which was about 80%. But 79.94 is still a very good turnout compared to other countries across the world. And with the increase in the registration, this essentially means that the actual total number of electors who voted was higher than the total number of those who voted in 2009. So we have to commend the people of Cayman Islands for the high voters turnout. Finally, because I was told that the media liked that I kept my press briefing very short, and I will definitely try to do that even today. I take this opportunity to thank you, members of the local media. You have been exceptional, very helpful to us, I have to say. Everyone, single one of you have been exceptional, helpful to us. You covered our mission very well, and we thank you for that. And it was through you that we introduced ourselves and what we will be doing and what we've did today to the people of the Cayman Islands. And I am very grateful to all members of the media. Thank you very much. I would also like once again to commend the people of Cayman Islands for the way this election was conducted, for the maturity they have shown throughout the campaign, and the orderly manner and the calmness which reigned during polling day and also during the hours leading to the results. I would also like to commend the people of Cayman Islands for their efforts to enfranchise themselves. Last but not least, I would also like to thank the people of the Cayman Islands on behalf of my colleagues for the warm welcome they have extended to us in every place we've been to. They've been exceptionally very warm, very welcoming to us and very nice to us, and I have to thank them as well. Thank you very much for bearing with me. I will take questions if there are questions, and we will try to answer to the best of our ability.
Should I ask them all at once? I have 3 things.
Okay.
All at once? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right. Just for the first one, if I could do this on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best and 1 being the worst, how would you rate the Cayman Islands elections process and the voting process? That would be the first question. The second question, I think I heard you say, Mr. Galea, that there were a total of 24 reports or allegations related to corruption in the election process that were reported to the police. Did I hear you correctly on that?
Yes,
Okay. If there's any way you could explain that a little bit further, like what in general were these allegations, and what what they entailed, and what did your group do, if anything, to sort of look into these? And then the third thing is on the issue of equality of voting. It's a little bit confusing the way you all have worded it here, but are you saying that it's your view or the view of the Commonwealth that each representative district there should be approximately the same number of voters represented by each elected member? And can you clarify that for us?
Okay, let me start with the with the last question. Essentially, what we're trying to say is that the fact that you've got multi-members constituency essentially means that one person in the Cayman Island can have 1 vote, and another one living in another constituency a few kilometers away from him would have 6 votes. So that is against the international principle of 1 person, 1 vote. So that was our concern. Our concern was also that if you are in Cayman Brac, you could be elected as a member of the Legislative Assembly with an average of 520, 540 votes. But then if you are contesting in the same election to be a member of the same Legislative Assembly in Georgetown, you need approximately 1,240 votes. So there's also this disproportion about the votes you need to be elected from one constituency to another. So that was our concern. The issue of multi-members constituency, primarily because it is against the international principle of 1 man, 1 vote. Well, according to the 24 alleged cases of corruption, I have spoken to the commissioner, but this is on Cayman Net News as well. It was on the 23rd, and it was quoting the commissioner of police. Over 24 allegations of corruption were made to the Royal Cayman Island Police Service during the just concluded election campaign. Police Commissioner has disclosed this to Cayman Net News. And then he said that there were 20 allegations of corruption made to the police as well as the Anti-Corruption Commission. They were all followed up, and there's always been, as has always been the case, we have people who do not want to tell us issues and do not want to give the statements. We have investigated all these allegations so that people can be clear that there is oversight and they can know that the anti-corruption team wants to follow up every allegation in level. So I am quoting what the police commissioner said and what also he told me this morning in our telephone call. We obviously, part of our assignment was to meet the police, and today I called him to get the latest update. If I had to classify between 1 and 10, first of all, it is a principle in observation missions that we do not compare one election to another country. But I think the opening statement, which practically said that the elections were genuine, democratic, transparent, and they reflected the will of the people, says it all. So if I have to give a number, I would go for 9, personally. Probably 10 would be elections in heaven, I would say. That is where perfection is. But I would go for 9. It's a personal opinion. I did not discuss this with my colleagues, but I think the opening statement says it all. If the result reflects the will of the people, then they are the good elections.
Maybe just a
Yes.
technical remark. Often election observation mission recommends, in terms of size of the electoral district, that after population census is done, normally if you have, let's say, single mandate district, there should not be more than 15% people difference between the population among the districts. So this is something then, if it is more than 15%, it varies. There is a recommendation probably that the new district should be drawn, etc. So this is just to add on that issue.
Okay. I noticed in the report you talked about how fair the media had been. I was wondering if there was any, or if you had noticed rather, how the media was treated during the election process. It was about what our role was during the process. Wondering if you had any observations, and if you'd like to share those observations of how we were treated, if you will.
Well, unfortunately, as I've said, because of the number of observers and the limitations of this group, of this observer mission, we did not carry out a quantitative or qualitative monitoring of the media. So I cannot answer your questions. If you've got some information you'd like to give to us, we will be very pleased. And you could speak to us even after the press conference. But no, I cannot answer that question because I don't have the necessary information. Ideally, perhaps the ideal thing would be to have the resources to carry out media monitoring, but we did not have the resources, both because of the size of this mission and also because of the duration we've been here. Although we try to do our best to monitor as much as possible.
Wondering too if you had any observations at the polling stations themselves, if how behavior was conducted, if you will, at the polling stations, if you saw anything untoward happening. We got some reports of some behavior, so wondering if it was something that you had observed and
do you mean on E-Day?
Yes.
By candidates or by party?
By both, maybe by supporters. Just wondering if you had any observations in that regard.
Not that I know of. In West Bay, there was one party which was a UDP party. They were in a private area outside the 100 meters. We went over to see what they were doing, and while we were there, I have to say, they were doing nothing illegal. They had or illegal. It's not the right word. I'm not here to decide what is legal or what is legal. Nothing which was not according to the regulation. They had a register, which they had a voters register in that particular area, which they had a right to have, and they told us that they were giving information to voters, to people who requested the information related to where they had to vote. During our visit, that's what we saw, and we've been to other places, and that is, as far as I know, the only thing that we saw, to answer your question. And I have to say, it was in a private area. The law speaks about public area, and it was also outside the 100 meter zone. But inside polling stations, or very near polling stations, we did not see any active campaigning going on E-Day. If we saw, definitely that would have featured in our report. But I have to say, even from the debriefing I had from my colleagues yesterday, this was not reported as far as we're concerned. Wendy.
I just have one question. I just wondered whether you had any thoughts about our own domestic observers, that we had our own team as well, whether you had any interaction with them, and how you feel about countries having their own observers. That's it.
It is positive to have domestic observers, but once you ask me the question, I would have preferred if the local observers were not chosen by the election office, but rather they would be rather organized. The initiative would come from the civil society, from the NGOs, because that you can call domestic observers. But because they were chosen from the election office, that might create a problem. I am not questioning, I have to make it very clear, the good work that they have conducted. We've met the local observers, the domestic observers. We've met them before the election. We obviously met them during the election. They were all over the polling stations. They observed the counting. They asked questions. And I'm not questioning their integrity or the work being conducted by them. It is positive to have domestic observers. I would have liked if this initiative came from the NGOs and from the civil societies, and the role of the election office would be to give them accreditation rather than being handpicked by the election office.
I know that Mr. Galea speaks for everyone here, but I'd just like to hear from each one of you what your initial thoughts were on the elections itself. We're radio, we like to add a little more voice than just his to our stories. And also, Senator, I believe Jersey, I think we spoke on the elections night. Is Jersey a multi-member constituency-based country?
Yes, we have a unicameral assembly with some seats, although we've just had a referendum to change that, but we've come from a situation where we've got some seats that were single seats and some seats multi-seats, so there are some comparisons between the Cayman Islands and Channel Islands.
Sure, and I'd just like more of your thoughts on the recommendations for us to switch to a single-member constituency from you, having been in a multi-member constituency-based country.
I think it's always very difficult I think it's always. I wouldn't wish to make any judgments. It's up to the Assembly and the people of the Cayman Islands to decide what their own structure of their own political system is. There are differences between the Channel Islands and Jersey specifically, in the Cayman Islands, is we don't have party politics, so that's obviously a difference. But clearly there are some interesting comparisons to be taken in the situation of single seat constituencies. The Speaker of the Bermudan Assembly comes from an assembly and an island which has single seat constituents. There's no one single solution. It has to be the after appropriate debate and discussion within the community. It has to be a matter for the people and the Assembly of the Cayman Islands to decide what the right way forward is. But you can do some comparisons, and that's interesting.
I would ask my colleagues to be very brief and probably give their opinion about the elections.
I would like to say that overall, as the leader of the mission has said, I certainly, in viewing the election and the short time that I've been here before the election, found all to be very much above board, and certainly this was, I think, an excellent opportunity given to the people of Cayman Islands to determine who it is that they wanted to be representing them in the legislature. So I certainly support fully the comments by Mario in terms of how we saw the election go.
Marosh?
I don't know.
Philip?
If I may also endorse what the Speaker said, I'd like to thank the people of the Cayman Islands and everybody from officials to candidates for the many questions that we posed to them and the way in which they've answered. People have been very open, they've been very forthright in the way that they have answered those questions, and that certainly helped us to take a temperature reading, to take a measure of the way the elections have been carried out, which certainly I would describe as a vigorous political debate, and as the leader of the mission has said, certainly expressing the will of the people of the Cayman Islands.
I had the pleasure of being in Cayman Brac, so I've had the opportunity to see Cayman and Cayman Brac, which has been a superb opportunity for me. Things went very smoothly in Cayman Brac. It was a pleasure to be there, and the people understood the process, and everything was dealt with in a very amicable way. It was a good experience throughout. In terms of multi-member constituencies, in Scotland we have, if you like, a hybrid system. system where 73 MPs are elected first past the post, and then there's a system of proportional representation. It's called the additional member, where there are 8 regions and 7 members are elected from each region, making 56, so we have a parliament of 129. It's quite a mixture of voting systems in Scotland. In local government, it's a single transferable vote. So sometimes we say Scottish people, when they're voting for Westminster first past the post, additional member and first past the post for the Scottish Parliament, and single transferable vote, are the most educated electors in the world.
And if I may also add probably one comment to the one man, one vote principle. I can offer a broader interpretation. It does not necessarily mean there must be a single mandate constituency. There's also what is important is that one man equal number of votes. So you may have a multi-member constituencies, but the size and the number of returned candidates should be as much as possible equal. And that's the broader interpretation of the principle one man, one vote. I would say one man equal number of votes.
Maros?
Or maybe I just can say that it's a pleasure to be in a country where we can, as a team, very easily find consensus what we would like to say at the press conference, that these elections were genuine, transparent, and I think it's also interesting that to be election observer when you have a country where there is such a competitive process, you have so many candidates running and the media interest, etc. So I think it was very interesting several days for us as observers as well.
I don't know if there are any more questions.
I just wanted to clarify one thing.
Yes, please.
This is going to be terribly important for the next 18 months or so. The 2 gentlemen on the end spoke of some specific issues with one man, one vote. So let's say we decided in the Cayman Islands to go to single-member constituencies, and our voting districts, our single-member voting districts that we created, some of them had 1,000 voters in them, and some of them had 500 or 600 voters in them. That's what I believe you said, and I'm not sure if you said this as well, but what you said was that is not best practice as far as...
Yes, exactly. This is what I mean. But I would like to correct, it's not about number of voters, because you have active registration. It's about the size of citizens, of people who are eligible voters, according to the size, exactly, size of the district. And then it should not be varied among themselves more than 15-20%. This is the best practice around the world. But in many countries, the district really varies more than 15 or 20%. But this what would we recommend to have in anywhere in the world if we're doing the same election observation mission.
Well, if I may add to that basically the principle of equal vote has 2 aspects. One is, as I said, one man, one vote, or one man equal number of votes. And the second aspect is the equal weight of each vote. It means that the number of number of people or electors represented by one member of the Legislative Assembly should be as far as possible equal, with the 15% variation being internationally accepted as a tolerance level. But in case of Cayman Islands, this discrepancy is over 100% and that is clearly more than the internationally recognized acceptance level in variation of the size of electoral districts.
There is a international convention called the Venice Convention, which I believe is also got some guiding principles on analysts will be able to say on that.
Yeah.
And it's important to compare jurisdictions. We've got 3 small island jurisdictions, well, not bigger than Malta and Bermuda is bigger than Jersey, but there are some good comparisons of other small island jurisdictions in the way that you elect people, and it may be good to look and compare and contrast those.
Any more questions? So if there are, I would like to thank you. I would like to reiterate what I've said in the introductory press briefing, that our report, preliminary report, and even the final report would be what we have observed. There was no influence or no attempt to influence what we decide, and our decision is purely that of the observer team. I have to say there was no attempt whatsoever, but this is our observation mission, and it is the observers on this mission, those whom you are seeing, and the other two who left early this morning, who would decide also on the final report. What will happen now, we will start drafting the final report. We'll obviously communicate with each other to have a consensual support for that report before actually being submitted. And our final report would of course include, we will offer some recommendations as well, because the scope of this mission is also to offer recommendations. We will offer recommendations as well where we think that they are necessary. We will definitely, you will definitely have the report within 2 months latest. I hope we will conclude it before. So thank you very much. I would like to thank you once again, not only for being present, but for covering our mission, and also for being so helpful to us, and for the great job you have done during this election. Thank you very much.